one of the most powerful ways to deal with the loss of a loved one and grief is to honor them in how you are living. That makes me want to be a better version of myself than probably I was before the event actually occurred. It could be even more powerful than a reset button if our focus is how do we honor them and show up differently or more powerfully in a way that honors them, but also honors those in our care as well.
Kipp, what's up, brother? Good to see you, man. Sounds like both of us had a good weekend, I'll say. You had a little bit more challenge than I did, but both of us had a good weekend, I think.
It happens. I'm full disclosure, I'm actually on I'm going on 36 hours right now, 36-hour fast. So I might be a little I feel great right now. So, but you know how it is sometimes when you're deprived of food, your other faculties kick in and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll be overly emotional. We'll see how it goes.
The fasting thing is interesting to me because it shows you how little relative to how much we typically consume the body needs. You know, we hear a lot from health guys that are like, get your protein, eat lots of food. But I think generally the greater risk is that most of us eat way too much food. I went to Vegas this weekend and I jumped on the scale this morning. I lost 4 pounds. And I didn't feel hungry. I mean, it wasn't like we were like gorging on food or anything like that, but it was interesting because I just cut out a couple of meals because we were busy. We had things going on. It was busy. And I think there's a general misconception about how much food we as humans should consume. Because if you think about us as ancestors, we rarely ate, and I don't think we probably sat down and had dinner together. Yeah. I think it was like, there's some berries, eat them right now as quickly as you can. And I'm sure there was some storage and things like that, but it is interesting when you think about our ancestral roots and how we consume food today relative to what it was 5,000, 10,000 years ago.
Totally. I mean, do we even know what hungry really feels like?
No.
Right.
36 hours isn't hunger.
Yeah. And people think they're like, oh, no, I felt hungry. You're like, no, you didn't feel satisfied, right? Like there's two different feelings. And we mistaken satisfaction as hungry, but it's funny.
So with your fast, how long are you going?
I was going to go until tomorrow or this morning. And then I was like, I don't know, let's keep going. Right.
So 48 hours, you think?
48 hours will be tonight at 8 p.m. But I wouldn't be surprised if I go, 48 in, let's go a little bit more, right? I
mean, you're going to go to sleep, so you might as well just go to sleep and get 60 hours in, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Oh. So you're drinking water though?
Yes. Yeah. Drinking water.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. We'll talk about it next week, but I'd be curious to get your after action review. Like, here's what was hard, here's what was challenging, but here's what I learned, here's the value I gained from it, because I think there's a lot of people who'd be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly willing.
Cool. Awesome, man.
All right.
Well, so let's jump into some questions today.
Yes, absolutely. So our first question, Chad Scott. In light of this month's book, The Man the Moment Demands, he speaks of grace for parents who have wronged you. What do you do when you have forgiven a parent holding no ill will towards them, but you still can't stand to be around them, especially if they show no remorse or always play the victim in life, including the wrongs they caused you? Is honoring their position as mother and father just not speaking ill of them or forcing yourself to be around them despite the lack of connection and loving feelings?
Man, there's a lot to unpack here. First, you say you have no ill will towards them, but clearly you do. So let's get that out in the open right now. And that's not an indictment, but I want you to search your heart and ask yourself, do you really have no ill will towards your parents? Because
they have no remorse. They're still, you know what I mean? Yeah.
They're not doing it. Like you do. Yeah. For sure, you do. I don't think there will ever come a point in your life where you will ever completely absolve yourself of the feelings that you might have towards them as you were growing up. But that's not the point. The point is, as a mature man, as an intelligent, rational, elevated man, that you're consciously making the choice to think differently about the scenario. So, really briefly, I have no ill will or animosity or contention towards my mother. Great mother, served us well, still serves us well, loves us, never had to worry about food on the table, roof over our head. She worked 3 jobs at a time at points in our young lives to make ends meet. But I do have some contention towards my father. And he passed away years ago, and I think that was pretty cathartic for me when he did pass away. And you and I have some experiences where it's a crossover, Kipp.
Yeah.
Where I learned to forgive my father after he passed away, and I wish I would have forgiven him beforehand. But the thing that's really been helpful for me is recognizing my own inadequacies. So when I see my shortcomings as a father of my 4 kids, and I realize that I'm impatient and I get frustrated, and sometimes I don't know what to do with them or how to handle a certain situation, I try to actually look at it through the lens of my father's experience. He probably felt the same way. Yeah. He loved me, but he was frustrated, and he didn't know how to connect, and maybe I was a little jerk because of being a young teenage boy, for example. And there's so much more I could have done, and looking at it through my own lens continues to give me a sense of grace towards him. And the other thing I've realized is that this one's really been hard for me to wrap my head around is, as grown men, yes, we have a responsibility for our own lives and our own behavior. But also, as I mature, I recognize in myself and others that the things that we believe about our lives and the things that we do in our lives are, at a minimum, influenced by our culture, by the parenting we received, by the experiences that we've had, by the trauma that we've had to deal with. And as a grown man, you have a choice to overcome that, but let's not pretend that isn't a factor that we need to confront and deal with. So your parents, I would imagine, love you, but they did the best they could, just as you love your children and you're doing the best that you can. And I promise you, as your kids get older, they're going to have issues with the way you raise them, just as you have issues with the way your parents raised you. So forgive and forget? No. Forcing yourself to? No. Just make a choice. I'm going to remember the good things. I'm going to take the lessons. I'm satisfied with where I am in life. And the bad things, I'm going to chalk up. I'm going to forgive. I'm going to not overlook, but I'm going to choose a better narrative. Yeah. That's my thought.
I love it. I mean, if Chad, if you needed a thought to add to this, is if you were, did he say mom or dad?
I thought he said both, but I could have not.
Yeah, he said mother and father. So if you were your mom and dad and you were raised how they were raised, you would have done exactly what they would have done.
Or worse. I hate to say it, but you could have done worse. We don't know.
Yeah. So there's power in empathy. Now, I'm not saying we go, oh, everything's okay, right? But like it is. And I love what you said, Ryan. You make a choice. Oh, but they did. No. Do you choose to honor them right now? Yes or no? And one of the things I hear a little bit in here is like, can't stand being around. Who's that about? You're still a son. So let me ask you, what does Chad Scott, the ideal son, do? How does he respect his parents in spite of their past, in spite of the decisions and actions they've made? What does that son look like? You do you. You do the thing that you know you should be doing. And if you can do that in a way with holding boundaries, right? And making sure that you have a mental healthy state and a healthy place for your family. If you can do that and show them honor in spite of it, awesome. And why are you doing it? Because they deserve it? No. You're doing what you know you should be doing because you want to be a man of integrity. And sometimes that's just enough.
Well, it says more about you than it says about them, and that's where your life is now. I will say the honor your mother and father thing, I struggle with that. I honor both my parents for how the way they showed up but I don't think by default I need to honor somebody because they birthed me. Like, that's the bare minimum. It's so easy to have sex and have a baby. Like, that means nothing. If that's all you're looking at, it literally means nothing. Because barring medical, everybody can do that, and it's just so flippant today in modern culture. So
but they also didn't have to. They didn't have to.
No, but also, why did they? Were they lust hungry? Were they stupid kids? Like, were they thoughtful and deliberate about? I don't honor it just because you're my biological mother or father. I don't. I can't wrap my head around that concept, even though we're commanded to do that. That's a hard one for me, but I can honor elements of it. And I don't even honor the position. You know how people say, well, like, honor the office of the presidency. Why? Why should I? This country was founded on not honoring unrighteous authority. So why should I do that just because it's the office of the presidency? I'm not doing that. And I feel the same way about parenting. But I can honor and respect certain elements of it. But I will say on a practical level, when you're having a struggle with somebody who you can't maybe entirely eliminate from your life, is to create healthy boundaries. And I have to ask if you've done that. So you say, I can't stand to be around them. Yeah. Why? Is it because they're abrasive? Is it because they talk about things that you don't want to talk about? Is it because they are inappropriate with your kids? And I'm not saying like sexually necessarily, but like, are they crossing you and your wife's boundaries? And then the real question then becomes, are you a man who can establish and uphold boundaries? Because there might be some ability to compartmentalize here where you might have your own issues with your parents, but you might say, hey, you don't get to do that in this dynamic anymore. I'm a grown man. You're not going to treat my kids like that. You're not going to cross and overstep these boundaries. And my question is, have you communicated those boundaries? And that's some things that you can do on a practical level so that you can actually just enjoy your time. And hey, we're not going to talk about this. You're not going to engage in this. You're not going to do these things. And if you do, we're not going to be in this relationship. But if you can respect those boundaries, then we'll have a great relationship.
Yeah.
So that's more of a pragmatic approach to it.
We kind of have to call this out, Ryan, that the reason for this conversation is what's best for you and your family. Like
your family.
This advice isn't in the space of what's best for your mom and dad. This is literally what's best for you and your soul and for your family. Like, and so don't take this advice as like, you know what I mean? Like, we're saying on your mom and dad or be nice to your mom and dad because, they deserve it. No, actually, that's not good for you to have that in you. And it will affect you, right? And back to a comment you said earlier, Ryan's like, I still think you might have some ill will. Here's the measuring stick. I'm stealing this from the book, The Anatomy of Peace, Chad. But like, do you have a heart at war towards them? Yes or no? And that language always works for me. If you do or not. It's like a heart at peace or a heart at war. And if you have a heart at war, then there's work to be done.
I sense a heart at war.
Same.
We got a comment on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and I was going to mention it to you. It was like somebody said, the bully bros are back.
The bully bros.
The bully bros, which I thought was kind of clever. I kind of like that name, But I think
is
what they were
good?
alluding to
is that bad?
No,
yeah.
No. I kind of thought it was a negative connotation where you and I talk about these issues, but it got me thinking about this. I hope we're never harsh. I don't want to be harsh with people. I just want to be honest. And I want to share concepts that maybe aren't always the most comfortable to hear. So my intent is never to bully anybody. And I would have people consider that the people who tell the truth are the ones who care the most. Because if somebody does not tell you the truth, they lie to you. Here's a silly example. Let's say I had a really good dinner with somebody and I've got like some food in my beard. The person who cares about me more is not the one who ignores the food in my beard. It's the guy who says, hey, you got a little food in your beard. Why don't you get that? And most people won't do that, unfortunately, because they don't want to make it awkward or weird. But that's the person who cares about me more.
Yeah.
That's the person. And then we talk about it in this context, or maybe even a romantic relationship. The woman who's going to be honest with you about how she's showing up, about how you're showing up, about how she wants you to show up, that's the one who cares about you. You know who you have to worry about not caring about you? The ones who don't talk and the ones who are indifferent. Those people don't care about you. Or the ones who tell you what you want to hear. Those people don't care about you. They care about themselves. They don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to make it awkward. They don't want to make it weird. They don't want to hurt your feelings because maybe that diminishes your relationship. It's the ones who have the balls and the courage to say, you know what? Hey, you got a little food in your beard or you got a booger hanging out of your nose. Just wanted to let you know. Those are the people who actually care about you. So always remember that in these types of conversations, because I care, and Kipp, I know I can speak for you. You care too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in context of our conversation here with Chad, Ryan, have you had a heart at war towards your parents?
Of course, my dad. Never towards my mom, but of course towards my father.
Have you done this wrong? Absolutely. So everything that we're saying to you, right? Like we have experienced and or we're going through and we're processing at the same exact time, right? So this isn't, in the spirit of, we're better than you, right? We're all on the path together.
Yeah. Cool. What's next?
All right. Ryan Partain, what does it look like to hold confidence and humility in the same time? Or he said in the same hand, sorry.
Oh, it's they're actually inextricably connected. And let me explain. You can't, so it's a good question. I'm trying to think about how to frame this. You can't be confident unless you have humility or at least exhibited some level of humility. You can be arrogant, you can be egotistical, you can be narcissistic, but you can't be confident because confident recognizes that you were inadequate at some point in your life to some degree and you were able to overcome it through your effort. Yeah. That's it. So now, humility, can you be, most people, I think, generally navigate, I would say most people generally try to navigate towards being humble at the expense of being confident. And I don't think you can do that either because humility is an accurate assessment of your strengths and weaknesses. Not just your weaknesses. I'm pretty good at a few things. In fact, I'm really good at a few things. And I'm really bad at a few things. Yeah. And both exist simultaneously. Like I'm not God's gift to, whatever. And I'm not the most horrible person on the planet either. But if you want to improve and get better, you need to be humble. And if you've improved and got better, you've had to have been humble at some point. If I'm going to be a better podcaster, for example, then that means I've had to exercise some humility and say to myself, I'm not as good as I'd like to be. What do I need to learn? If I want to improve in my relationship and my relationship is getting better and doing well and thriving, then that means at some point I acknowledge that it wasn't doing well and I wasn't showing up the way I should show up. And therefore I addressed it in a humble fashion and it's produced the results that I desire. So they go hand in hand. From a very pragmatic or applicable approach, I think it's really just acknowledging that you're a good and decent human being who's on a path to growth. And so when you're talking with a business partner or a friend or a romantic interest, I think it's okay to say, I feel really good about these things that I've produced and these results that I've had and the success I've enjoyed. And also it's been hard because I've had to overcome this and I struggle with this. And these are my demons, so to speak. I think people would really appreciate that. So I don't look at them as competing concepts. I look at them as complementary.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had to pull up a post. This is what I wrote. Humility is accepting that you don't know all the answers. Confidence is knowing you'll figure it out. Right? So this is how they intertwine. What's really interesting about this, Ryan, I've done some study around this concept of confident humility. And obviously, we could look at a spectrum and say people sometimes are overly confident, right, and lack some humility, or
But I got to stop you real quick on that. You can't be overly confident, because then you're tiptoeing into arrogance or ego.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want to clarify. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So with that said, right, tiptoeing into that space of arrogance, the number one driving factor to drive confidence, believe it or not, is gratitude. And the number one driving factor to drive humility is gratitude, which I find is super fascinating, right? And so, Ryan, when you say hold confident humility in the same hand, it's actually like gratitude is at the root of both of those, which is really cool.
Kipp, I like what you said. I wrote this down. If you know this, but if you guys don't know, I take notes. Like I'm over here like typing notes because I refer to these things. And you said you'll figure it out. Like for whatever reason, that really resonated with me. I love optimistic people. I really care. Like it resonates with me when I see a person who's dealt with hardship to varying degrees or struggle or contention or challenge and overcome it. Like the optimism that people have in spite of maybe even horrific circumstances and situations is really fascinating to me. Like how could that person be so optimistic about life? But then you said, you'll figure it out. I like this concept because there are people who believe that they will figure it out, and there's people who believe that they never will. And it's really just a choice. But when it comes to the concept of you'll figure it out, I think what most people fail to do is recognize, this is where the confidence conversation comes in, recognize that they've done some pretty damn good things in the past. You know, as a 44-year-old man, for example, I had a failed marriage, and people say, oh, you had a failed marriage. Bro, I did 18 years. You let me know as a newlywed when you are able to create a 18-year marriage, and then you can chastise me about what I did or didn't do. Or, hey, Ryan, that business venture failed. Yeah, and you know what? I've got 4 businesses under my belt that are in the top 1% of earning in the world. So when you have that, then you can chastise me about the one business venture that didn't work out the way you think it should have worked out. So what I want to tell people is, yeah, you're going to have some catastrophic failures and you're going to do some horrible shit in your life. But also, you're still kicking. And you overcame abuse, and you overcame trauma, and you overcame the brink of bankruptcy, and you overcame sexual abuse, and you overcame divorce, and you overcame, name it. We all have our stuff. And you're still here, which means you're capable of something better. It's just now a recognition of what you're going to choose. Are you going to wallow and cry and complain and relent or relinquish your sovereignty to whatever else happened to you? Or are you going to be and do more moving forward? That's your choice. Yeah. But it requires both an acknowledgement of where you're weak and an ability to say, you know what, I did it before, I can do it again. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out because I figured it out before. And that's confidence.
Yeah. Okay, Bob Ross. I just today had a colonoscopy, and they found some, is it polyps? Polyps?
Polyps, yeah, polyps.
Polyps. And I'm 43, my son is 9. This is bringing up tremendous feelings because my father passed away when he was 50 from colon cancer that metastasized in his liver. He was diagnosed when he was 44, so he died, 6 years later. I was 16 when he was diagnosed and 21 when he passed. I have processed his death over the past year and have peace with the event. But now that this has shaken me, I know this does not guarantee that this will be my path, but damn, it is bringing up feelings from when he passed away when I was 21. And to be honest, I am scared as hell. Not for me, but for my son and wife. I have everything in order. If I were to die, for them to be okay financially, but I worry about them having to go through the emotional trauma. Normally, I feel pretty strong and I know what needs to be done in tough situations. I feel lost. I feel scared. Any help would be greatly appreciated.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing this. These are vulnerable conversations, and I use that in the truest sense of the word, not this modernized version of vulnerability. Here's one. I read this a little bit earlier before you jumped on the podcast. Here's one thought. Your dad may have saved your life through his own diagnosis. Really, like you may not have gone and had that taken care of if your dad didn't pass away the way he passed away. So he literally could have saved your life. I had a friend years ago tell me about his own personal story, and he was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer that he ended up really struggling with, fighting with, and then ended up beating that cancer. And it was hard for him. And as he was talking about this form of cancer, he communicated when he was younger how he felt when he was diagnosed and all the challenges and struggles that he dealt with. And he cursed God. And he said, why does this have to happen to me? Why me? Why, like, what did I do? Why do I deserve this? Why are you punishing me? And he cursed God. And over the time of researching this cancer that he was confronted with, he realized that this was hereditary. And I can't remember right offhand if it was a son or daughter who was later and eventually diagnosed with the same disease. And he said, now I know why God did that. He was preparing me to be able to help my child overcome the same thing I had to. And there's so much relatability in somebody who's gone through the same thing as you. So I do want to share that with you, that your dad actually might be a hero without even knowing or acknowledging it to his family, because he may have saved your life. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is being radically honest, being completely honest with your wife and your children. Because I know in these times we're supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to be strong, and you should be strong. You cannot break down in front of your wife and kids. You can feel the way that you feel. You can be sad, you can be scared, you can do all of those things, and you can communicate that in a very healthy, constructive, masculine way, but you can't break down in front of them. If you need to break down, you can call me, you can break down with me, because we know each other. You've been to our events, we've had conversations. If you want to break down and like fall apart for a time, you just call me up. I'll take that call. But you can't do it in front of your wife and kids. You can be honest with them. I'm not telling you to deceive them. But you need to do it from a rational, level-headed place, and you need to have these conversations. Hey, kids, we need to sit down as a family. Well, obviously, you'd have this conversation with your wife first to make sure she's on board. But hey, kids, we need to sit down as a family. We need to talk about this. Here's some health concerns. Here's why I'm scared. Here's why it's important. Here are the things that I've done to ensure this is in place, that if something were to happen now or in the future, you guys are taken care of. And not only do you get all your ducks in a row, but you communicate what you've done. And with young children, to the degree that they're able to process what you're talking about, you owe that to them. Man, could you imagine never sharing that with your kids and then them finding out one day that you have 60 more days to live? How traumatizing.
Yeah.
Versus sitting down with them and saying, hey, this is the reality of the situation. And here's what I'm going to do. We're going to change our diet. We're going to start exercising and getting in shape. We're going to educate ourselves on this illness and this disease. We're going to make sure all of our financial ducks are in a row. When you guys want to be reckless with money, here's why we're not going to do that, because we need to think about if I were gone. Man, these are actually really powerful, productive conversations that I think can actually get a lot of buy-in from your kids about why this is so important. Because the last thing you want to do is have them guess about why dad's different or why mom's behaving weirdly, and then one day you're gone.
Yeah. Well, and
I just wish more of us would have real conversations about real issues.
Yeah. And what great lessons. These are great lessons. I mean, and Bob, hopefully you feel the spirit of what I'm about to say, but like, we're all going to die. And so let's die well. You know, and maybe that's also, I mean, let me say it this way, because I don't want to be like, you know, saying anything negative about your current circumstance, Bob, right? Have hope and those things, but we will all die. Absolutely. And the possibility of my children dealing with my death is really high. So how well do I deal with it? Do I die well? Do I shine bright? Do I give them hope in regards to how it's done? Or do I exit in a way that then they're having to address that struggle for themselves with zero modeling on how to do it well? There's some power in our exit being done really well, because that will serve them, because eventually they will also need to exit.
Kipp, I'm reminded, I don't want to steal any of your own story, but I'm reminded of the story you told me, how you struggled with your father's death, and your daughters in particular writing you a note about why you can't sulk and be sorry, why you need to be. Can you share that story real quick? Do you mind? I know that's putting you on the spot, but would you mind sharing that?
It's fine. I mean, I make this mean something, right? But like, my dad passed away on my birthday. And so the anniversary of his death is a little tough. It's a tough birthday. And my daughter wrote me a note, and she said something to the extent of, and this is my daughter Kika, she said something to the extent of, you know, it was great. Dad, we love you, we appreciate you, all these things. And then she goes, and I'm sure you miss your dad, but you need to move beyond that because we need you. And does that serve them, right? Depending on how we deal with things, how we deal with death, how we deal with our own death, right? Those are opportunities to serve those that we love, you know? And that was a reminder from my daughter of like, hey, it matters how you show up. I know you're sad, but it matters because it affects us.
It's modeling, right? Like, you model the behavior that you'd want to see in them. And, you know, I did a Friday field. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know that's hard. Especially on the spot. I did a podcast last week about what we do, Echoes in an Eternity, and man, what a like, think about the movies that we love, and the hero dies. Why do we celebrate that? Why do we honor that? Because he died well. You know, he lived and he died well, and we have a choice how we act in those moments, and it's scary and it's hard. And by the way, I don't think you're gonna die anytime soon. You caught it early enough. I think I want to be clear on that. You're addressing it the way you need to, and I'm sure the prognosis is great. I hope it is. Please let me know if I'm mistaken. But man, you have a real opportunity here to model what you would like your kids to do and live, and all of those things as well.
Jordan Stanley, he says, how do you regain momentum after a major life catastrophe? For instance, I lost my mom, 68, to cancer last year, and my brain just doesn't seem to operate the same, and it's been very hard to regain that momentum I have last year before her diagnosis and her death. How can I hit the reset button and go back on track mentally?
So, as you were reading that, I had a thought. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss. I don't really want to imagine my mom passing away right now. So I can feel to the degree I can what you might be experiencing. My dad's passed away, and Kipp, you just talked about your dad passing away, so I can experience that and feel that, but that would be tough. I had this immediate knee-jerk thought, and I'd be really curious what you think about this, Kipp. My thought is this: it really doesn't matter what I say. What would she tell you? What if you asked her the same question? Because obviously you honor her, you love her, obviously. What would she tell you to do? I'm not even gonna assume what she would tell. I'm just gonna leave it there. What would she tell you to do? And then honor her the way it sounds like you have, and live the life that she would advise you to live.
Spot on. I think another way of looking at it is, what would you tell your kid?
Another great way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's the answer.
So let's give a little context here. I'm not going to tell Jordan what to, because I don't know. I don't know their dynamic, but I think if my mom passed away, ooh, man, that's actually tough to think about. I think she'd want me to be happy. I think she'd want me to follow my dreams. I think she'd want me to really be vested in being a good father, being present and available. I think she would talk with me about overcoming my own vices and struggles. I think she would probably tell me to be more compassionate towards myself. I'll actually stop right there, but those are some of the things.
I think that's the reset button, right? Is you one of the most powerful ways to deal with the loss of a loved one and grief is to honor them in how you are living. And for me, when I think about that, that makes me want to be not just reset to baseline. That makes me want to raise the baseline. That makes me want to be a better version of myself than probably I was before the event actually occurred. So it could be even more powerful than a reset button if our focus is how do we honor them and show up differently or more powerfully in a way that honors them, but also honors those in our care as well.
I actually think, too, in addition to that, there's value in mementos. So maybe she had a pendant or something that she wore, or maybe you have a pendant that reminds you of something that she used to tell you as a kid, and that's a necklace that you wear, or a bracelet, or something at home on the bookshelf that reminds you of her and the lessons that she taught you, or maybe it's a little note, or maybe she used to say phrases that when you were a kid just you'd roll your eyes at and would bother you, and now you're like, damn, that was actually really good motherly advice, and you have that sitting on the dashboard of your car, so every time you're driving down the road you remember, oh yeah, mom said this, I got to do that. I actually think there's a lot of value in mementos for the things that you want to learn and the people you want to hold on to.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and even journaling about her. Document those so your children can have a relationship with her as well, right? And your grandkids.
You've talked about that, yeah. Like your kids' is it grandma or grandfather that they act as if they know them, but they don't. They passed away before they were born.
Yeah,
or when they were little.
They know Asia's grandma, Meme. Yeah. They know her, right? Because she journaled, right? And Asia hasn't let go of her legacy, right?
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. That's really cool. All right, what's next?
All right, Josh.
Man, this
Sutton.
one's tough. This is a deep Ask Me Anything today. Holy cow. Lighten it up a little bit for us.
Josh Sutton, how do you prioritize goals in life the best? I want to keep my fitness, but I also want to pay off debt quickly and could pick up more hours or a second job.
Yeah, so you're operating in a false dichotomy. This is Josh, right?
Yeah.
He's already operating in a false dichotomy, so he's setting himself up for failure. This is a false dichotomy that's really hard for me to wrap my head around, so I think we'll be able to kind of break this down and dissect this a little bit. But you're saying that if you want to stay healthy, you can't stay healthy because you're prioritizing your finances. And that doesn't compute to me. And there's two reasons why I think you might be thinking this: financial constraints and time constraints. So a lot of people who are trying to get out of debt, for example, and get their money house in order, Dave Ramsey might say, live on beans and rice and cut out unnecessary expenses. So you might make a choice to cut out a $50 gym membership. And that's fine. Like, that might be a prudent decision. Okay, so now you're not going to the gym. So find a buddy who has a home gym. Go run. Go do push-ups every morning. Go to the park and do a park workout. Like,
dial in your diet.
Go on hikes. Yeah. Dial in your, yeah, exactly. Like, there's so much you can do that I don't think he's saying this. I think he's more concerned about the time constraints. But if somebody's hearing this and like, well, I don't have money to go to the gym. What? Do you think that our ancestors had climate-controlled gyms where all of the weights were perfectly symmetrical and balanced for optimal performance? No, they were just badasses because life required it. So go outside and get to work. That's it. Just get to work physically. Go for a walk every night with your wife. Go run with your dog. Go jump on the trampoline with your kids. When your kids are at the park, do park stuff with them. We have a funny game. I'm not even going to say the name of it because it sounds so silly and stupid, but it means something to us, that we made up. And it's dumb and it's funny and it's hilarious and we play together. Like, there's so many options that you can do. Now, as far as the time constraints, I think that's a little bit more legitimate. But I know you, Kipp, you train jujitsu on your lunch break.
Yep.
Because that's what works for your schedule. And some people might say, well, that doesn't work for my schedule. Yeah, I know, probably not. So do something different. Maybe it's in the afternoon. Maybe it's in the evening. Who knows? Maybe it's just between appointments. You know, yeah, Kipp, you and I schedule in 1.5 hour blocks. So if we have an hour meeting, we actually block out an hour and a half. Okay, you have a half an hour. You could crank out 50 push-ups in a half hour. You could do 20 burpees. You could do some sit-ups. You can do some air squats. You can put kettlebells under your desk and do some front squats with kettlebells. Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan, he literally carries a kettlebell with him when he travels. It's like a 40-pound kettlebell. He just carries it around. Michael Easter does the same thing. The Comfort Crisis is the book that he's most well known for. He'll just go walk around and ruck in the airport when he's traveling. Like, don't tell me you don't have time. And here's how I know this. If there was an attractive woman, like a beautiful woman, and you were working, you're doing a 15-hour shift today, and there's this beautiful woman, and you think, man, and she's interested in you, and you're like, I just want to spend time with her. But man, I got a 15-hour work day, and then I've got this thing that I've got to do after work, and then I probably only get 5 hours of sleep. You're telling me there wouldn't be something that you would sacrifice to make that work to spend with her? Come on. You just don't want it bad enough. That's all it is. You just don't want it bad enough. And if that's the case, just be honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're like, no, I don't want that. I don't want that attractive woman, or I'm not willing to do that work. Fine, just say that. But I get tired of hearing people who say, oh, I really want to be in shape. I really want to be fit. I really want to have this. I really want to have that. I really want to work on my relationship. But nothing. It's just a prioritization. You're just making things more important than that, and you're not managing your time well.
Yeah. And part of this is us letting go of the expectations of what it looks like, right? I mean, we get sideways when we have expectations of like, oh, I want my fitness dialed in and this is what it's going to look like, right? And then when life happens and it disrupts it, people get sideways. I mean, look at COVID. A bunch of people got more healthy? No. Why? Because the systems changed, right? What they were used to, how fitness worked, going to the gym, those things changed on them. And so they threw it out. So you might have to let go of this ideal way that you think it should be and make do with what you have if it's important enough.
I mean,
and by the way, really quick, by the way, like
ahead, yeah.
the doing jujitsu at lunch, here's the deal. It's rarely ever the class. Sometimes meeting runs long. I don't have time. I literally have 20 minutes to go train. Almost every single time when that happens, I am tempted to go, no, not ideal. I didn't get the whole hour. And then I say, no, I'm better off for some versus none. And so then I go anyway. You have to kind of have that type of mentality.
Well, so this is something I call, Kipp, and I don't know if this has ever been talked about this way, but I've just dubbed the term, it's the fulfillment fallacy. And I see this all the time. And what I mean by that, and maybe I can come up with a better term for it, and if you guys have ideas, let me know. But like I said, I call it the fulfillment fallacy. And the fulfillment fallacy is that if I cannot fulfill the desire to the nth degree, I'm not going to do it at all. So I saw this all the time when I was running my financial planning practice. I would meet with people and I'd say, hey, let's get you saving $100 a month into an IRA or something. And they'd be like, oh, well, I really want to save $1,000 a month. So like, I'm not going to do anything. That's the fulfillment fallacy. It's like, either I can fulfill it to the nth degree or I'm not going to do anything. It's like, okay, yeah. I get that you want to invest $1,000 a month and I appreciate that. But let's get you started at 10% of that. And then we will fulfill the rest down the road as you have the means to do it. It's the same thing with jujitsu. Is it ideal? Are you going to get the best workout? The hour and a half, the 2 hour, are you going to be fully committed and bought into it because you might be distracted from a schedule that you have, or you got to jet out early because of an appointment, or maybe a client got mad at you before jujitsu and now you're just frustrated, so you're not as focused on what you do. That's the fulfillment fallacy. You think that because it's not going to be ideal that you shouldn't do it at all. No, just do it to the degree that you can, and the next day you can do it better and better and better and better, and so eventually you will fulfill the desire to its fullest, but you can't do it right now. Just get started. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Those are all the questions from Facebook.
Okay, cool. Let's jump over to, what did I say? Hold on a second here. We were going to go over to
the gram, if there was.
Instagram. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the first one. This one comes from Spartan Mode. He's been a follower for a very, very long time, and I hope we get a chance to connect here soon. He says, I've followed your journey since the beginning. I enjoy your messages, and you've clearly inspired thousands of men to aim higher. Looking around, I've noticed a pattern. A lot of men say they want to level up, yet few follow through. In yours and Kipp's opinions, what separates the ones who truly transform from those who stay stuck in the same patterns year after year? What would you say to that, Kipp?
Oh man, you make me go first. I have to think about this for a second.
Or I can. I mean, I'm never at a loss for words. The words aren't always great, but I'm never at a loss for them. You know what I think separates? Here's what I think it is. The thing that separates the people who do the work and the people who don't. Two things. Actually, maybe just one. It's expectations. That's all it is. It's faulty expectations around either their desire
how hard it is,
what it will take to accomplish.
Yeah.
So if I, for example, say to myself, since we were talking about jiu-jitsu, I want to become a jiu-jitsu black belt, but I've never trained before. Kipp, is that going to be easier or harder, do you think, than I think it will be having never trained before?
Yeah, you have no idea
harder.
what you're signing up for. Yeah, you think
it's
like, my kid has a karate my kid has a karate black belt. In a couple of years, I'm good to go. Yeah,
yeah. Because what we do is we look at it through the lens of people who already have achieved it, and we think, well, Kipp seems like a normal guy. He seems like a guy who's got a family and a good head on his shoulders, but he's an average person. But if he can do it, I can do it. But you don't realize what Kipp had to do over 14 years, 14 years of training at this point? 14 years of training. Bro, people can't commit to 14 minutes of doing something, let alone 14 years of doing something. Or they think, I really want a thriving marriage. I want to be connected with this woman, and I want to build a life together, and I have this romantic version of what this will look like. And then the first time you argue, you're like, what a bitch. It's like, well, hold on a sec, man. It's going to be hard. Or you want to start a business and they look at the lens of what we have been able to create over 10 years and you're like, oh, that's easy. You just get to talk to people every day. Well, yes, but there's other things behind it that make it successful that you're not even acknowledging. And so you have a faulty expectation of what it will take. Therefore, when you run up against that first hurdle, you're like, I didn't know it was going to be like this, or maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I'm doing it wrong because I'm facing these challenges, these hurdles and obstacles, and you quit because you either overestimated your own abilities or you underestimated what it would take and how long it would you would have to do it in order to achieve success. So I think most people start what they want to do. I do. I think most people start the fitness workout. I think most people try to improve their marriage. I think most people try to eat healthier. I think most people maybe pull up their bank account for the first time so they can get their budget under control. And the minute it gets hard, they're like, nah, not committed, didn't know it would take this, I'm out, even if they say it subconsciously.
Yeah, I agree. Another way of thinking about his question, like what's the difference? And I think these comments are in alignment, but for me, it's self-awareness, right? Because like the person that is not self-aware enough and they reach an expectation of like, oh, this is harder. They're not even self-aware enough to like self-evaluate of what is it that they're doing and why are they quitting, and they're just too flippant and being blown by the wind. You know what I mean? And so I think there's an element here of when we undermine, when we are out of integrity, when we don't do what we said we would do, when we know we want to be happy, but we show up in a way to cause conflict in our marriage. If there's a lack of self-awareness, then the probability is that we're not learning and growing from our mistakes, and it's everybody else's fault, right? And so it's like, oh, I want this amazing marriage. It shouldn't, and then we'll latch on to, it shouldn't be this hard. It must be the person I married.
Yeah.
And what do you even do with that, right? There's no growth in that. And they're just going to constantly be blaming and pointing the finger at everybody else for them not achieving things.
Agreed. I mean, I think it's just a misrepresentation of what it's going to take to achieve results.
Totally.
This is why I think it's very dangerous, very, very dangerous for any man to discount any other person's level of success.
Yeah, totally.
If you look at a guy and you're like, man, this guy's been married for 40 years. He's got a lovely bride. He's got 4 kids. They're all successful. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer, one's a this, one's a that. They've got 18 grandkids. And man, if only I would have met a woman like that, or had the wealth that he does, or lived in the place that he does. Oh man, I could have that too. No, you couldn't. There's no way you could have that, because if you could have had that, you would have already been on the path to having it.
Totally.
Or you look at somebody like even Trump, and I know this is a polarizing subject, but you think, oh, well, the reason he's a billionaire is because daddy gave him X amount of dollars to start his first business. And if daddy would have given me that money, then no, you wouldn't have. You'd be exactly where you are right now.
Yeah,
because
he
you
couldn't
didn't
even deal
earn
with
that.
his dad. Maybe his dad was horrible. I don't know any of that.
I would probably guess he probably was. I think Trump loved his father, but I'm sure he wasn't the most pleasant man to be around.
No.
So if you ever catch yourself saying or rationalizing or justifying or diminishing somebody else's success on a whim or fortune or this or that without acknowledging the real work that it took to get there, then all you're saying is, there's nothing I can do. It's all left to God and fate, and I just have to wait for my ship to come in. Good luck with that. And the interesting thing about that I found for people who are like, man, I just, when I get my break, when I catch my lucky break, and I'm like, well, okay, let's talk about your life. And they tell me about their life. I'm like, what about that? You had a guy that said he wanted to start a business with you. You didn't do that? Well, no, because it was, okay. Or they tell me about this incredible woman that they met, and they're like, oh yeah, she was great, but she did this thing I didn't like. It's like, so even if your ship comes in, if you're not in the right headspace, you won't even acknowledge it as your ship. That was the woman you were supposed to pursue. That was the business venture you were supposed to try. That was the hobby that you were supposed to engage in, and you didn't because conditions weren't perfect. Shame on you in that situation.
Yeah. A good pulse. I think I was at the main event years ago, and I didn't even remember what I talked about, but I remember asking this question because it tied into the conversation. But it was like, by a raise of hands, who believes that if their spouse would only show up differently in their marriage, they would have a more successful marriage.
Yeah, everybody, right?
Everyone's hand goes up. If we grabbed everyone listening to this podcast and said, okay, who all wants to be a millionaire? Raise your hands. All hands go up. No, you don't. Let's whiteboard the cost. Let's whiteboard the price that must be paid. And we'll see if you really want it or not. So we have these desires of expectations of what we want without the underlying understanding of what's required to get there. And then we walk around upset. Like, really? You're gonna walk around upset? All you had to do is actually come up with a list of what's required, and then you could come to the conclusion, I don't want any of that. I don't want to be a millionaire. I'm not willing to pay the price. Then awesome, be content where you are then. But complete the thought. Yes, I want to be a millionaire, and this is what I'm willing to pay to get there. And if those don't line up, then let it go.
Well, I was thinking about the wife thing that you were talking about. How many guys want their wives to be different so that the relationship will be better? There's an easy way to get your wife to act differently.
Be different.
You act differently.
Yeah.
If you, and it goes both ways, by the way. If you want to start being a dick and abuse her and be emotionally abusive and ignore her and create friction and distance between the relationship, don't be surprised when she says okay and does the same thing.
Yeah.
If, however, you want to get closer, you want to be more intimate, physically intimate, you want to have an emotional connection, you want to serve each other, you want to lean on each other, you want to support each other, then do that. And she will come around. Of course she will. Of course she will. And same thing with your kids, the same thing with your clients, same thing with your boss. And these are all questions we get every single week. Oh, my boss is a dick. Well, so are you. Oh, my kids can be little assholes. Well, so can you.
Yeah, where did they get it from?
All right. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. All right, let's take one more, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Let's see. So this one is, well, here's an interesting one. Utah Jits Mama.
Oh, Mio.
Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I know Mio.
Okay, so Mio says, how can men change the sexual violence numbers? What are the prevention opportunities that men specifically have that women don't? Thoughts on if there is toxic masculinity, is there also toxic feminism? Also, just for my own personal curiosity, why is toxic masculinity such a triggering phrase when so many men for so many men, and what would you prefer term-wise? That's a lot.
Instead of
That's
that
a lot
term.
to unpack.
Yeah, Mio, first off, it's one question, not five.
Ask me anything, not ask me everything. All right, well, let's unpack some of this. So let's do. I think the toxic masculinity thing is good. Is a good one to start with. That's more of an easy one, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like the term toxic masculinity because too many people have used it to paint all masculinity as inherently toxic. And that's why I don't like that. Do I think there's improper use of masculinity? Of course. And would some people call that toxic masculinity? Sure. And if that's the context of which we're talking about, I can agree with that a little bit. But when a group of people, bad actors, I'll say, get a hold of a term and use it to paint all masculinity as toxic, that's where I take issue. So I believe, and I'm going to be as succinct as I possibly can on this, that masculinity is not toxic, and it's not inherently virtuous either. I'll have people in the men's space who will disagree. They'll say masculinity is good. No, it's not. It's not good, and it's not bad. It's just amoral. Yeah. What is masculinity? It's a set of characteristics and behaviors that are driven by our biological hardwiring, our hormones, our chemistry, our biological makeup, and that's it. So if I walk down the street and I see a lovely woman and I think, I'm going to steal her purse or I'm going to sexually assault this woman, I might have a greater propensity as a man to do that than a woman might have. I don't think generally women are thinking, I'm going to go steal that man's wallet or I'm going to sexually molest him as he's walking down the street by himself. That's something that I think generally we can agree is something more geared towards what a man might do because of his masculinity. His need for sexual gratification, dominance, power, authority, all these things, okay? So we would all say that's an improper use of our biological conditioning. But if I see a man doing that to a woman and I go in and I beat the shit out of him and I neutralize the threat, we would all say, that's a man. That guy used his propensity for violence, his desire to protect, his physical aggression to subdue a threat to somebody who wasn't able to take care of it themselves. We would all say that's a man. So what's the difference? It's just the use of masculinity, and what we would call that is manliness. It's the ability to harness our masculine characteristics for virtuous and righteous outcomes for ourselves and for the people around us. And we would say that is a man. So I don't label improper behavior as toxic masculinity. I just say that's a man who engaged in improper behavior. Let's line him out in one way or the other, whether it's sending him to prison, enacting violence against him, or in some cases, it's just a little coaching. You know, my son makes a stupid comment or mistreats his girlfriend. I'm going to say something. I'm going to bring it up because he needs some correcting. And that's how we funnel and harness masculinity into good outcomes. Would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think it's spot on. And I think it addresses the other questions, right? Around, is there toxic feminism? It's same thing.
Of course.
It's amoral. Can feminism have a bad negative trait or have a negative side to it as well as a positive side? Absolutely. And I think it's obvious why it's a triggering, at least for us maybe and other individuals in this space. It's we don't like the blanketed statement that masculinity is this negative thing, right? And it often gets used that way. And that's really where that triggering comes from.
Well, I would only make one clarification when she said thoughts on if there is toxic masculinity. Is there also toxic feminism? Feminism isn't the counterpart to masculinity. Femininity is. And there's a distinction between femininity and feminism. So is there toxic femininity? Yeah. Okay, so here's a great example. Well, let me ask you. Generally, what would we attribute characteristics towards women in femininity? What would you say it is, Kipp?
They're more emotionally connected, loving, caring, thoughtful.
Nurturing is a word I would use.
Nurturing, yeah, that's a better word. Yep.
Yeah. So I agree with all of that. So let's say a mother is raising a son and she's being all of the lovely things that she is. Loving, caring, nurturing, compassionate, empathetic. But she's not willing to acknowledge that her son needs physical outlets and needs to be taught tough love and needs discipline in his life and needs to get in fights in some ways. And she shelters him from all of that and puts him in a little bubble and says, it's okay, and let me take care of this, and let me just make sure you're okay. And all of the things that are lovely about a woman, but she takes it to the extreme. That's toxic. That's actually harmful for young men. Yeah. Now, we don't usually acknowledge that because it's easier to see when a man is toxic. It's easier to see there's a very clear and real threat in the immediate, meaning somebody's in danger. If I see a woman and I want to exploit her sexually, for example, she's in very real danger right now. So society sees it and they're like, well, men are more dangerous. But here's an interesting thing to consider. How many school shooters don't have fathers in their lives? Now, we don't recognize it immediately, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road without a clear, healthy father role, these young men young boys are going in and shooting up schools. Yeah. That is a manifestation potentially of two things: toxic femininity and lack of manliness. But society doesn't talk about it because it's not as readily apparent and it's not as a clear and present threat and danger as maybe quote unquote toxic masculinity might be.
And let's be honest, I don't know, maybe I'm going on fringe here, but like society also doesn't want to say, hey, single mom, your environment is not ideal for kids.
Oh, right, sure.
We want to stay away from that. God forbid we say that dads are like a requirement for a well-nourished and raised child.
Yeah, good point.
You know what I mean? And so we won't touch that. And that's why, Dr. Farrell's book is so profound, right? Is like statistical evidence after evidence of the negative drawbacks of fatherless homes. It's profound. This isn't like, oh, well,
Guesswork.
Timmy's, you know, passive aggressive, right? No big deal. No, it's like, it's a cascading effect, which I think is a perfect segue, which is Mio's first question here around sexual violence numbers and the best ways to prevent, right? Guess what it is?
Men.
It's fathers in the home is what it is.
Right.
That's the number one prevention tool.
So, and because we know that, what I would say to single mothers and there are a lot of single mothers who listen to this podcast is, please do not take this as an indictment against your lovely feminine approach to the world. I think it's beautiful. I love what women bring to our society and to culture. Like life would be horrible if it was just all men. It'd be like in some ways, it'd be like, this is
disaster.
Awesome. It'd be like, you know, Lord, it'd be like awesome for 24 hours. And then it would be horrible. It would be ugly and it would be contentious and it would be violent and like nobody would be kind towards each other. Like it would be craziness. And there's also a converse in universe where if it was just women, it would be horrible too, right?
Yeah.
We need each other. But so I don't want a single mother to take this as an indictment against her loveliness, but you got to have other men in their lives. You have to get them involved in sports. You have to get them involved in youth activities where it's just boys and men. You have to encourage them to hang out and spend time with other boys. You have to recognize that them building a dirt track in the backyard and building, you know, maybe tearing up the grass and making a ramp out of the grass, although might frustrate you and bother you, is actually kind of cool because they're boys. Or that if you see them out fighting, as long as nobody's hurt, like, or getting injured, at the risk of getting injured, and they're fighting and they're working things out, then you have to kind of back off a little bit and respect the masculinity that they're working through right now. And then, of course, get good men in their lives through fathers, through uncles, through grandparents, through friends who can help mentor, guide, and instruct. And that is the answer, I believe, to the sexual violence numbers. It's horrific. It's horrible. I think about this with my own daughter. You know, Kipp, you have daughters too. You know, a lot of the men who listen do. I'm scared, man, for my daughter because of how prevalent it is. And you need to do two things generally. We need more men who are training and coaching and consulting and guiding our young men. And you also need to empower women for a couple of things. Naivete is one that I see a lot in young women. Like and again, it might sound incriminating. It's not. I just think I think women are generally more naive about the world than men are.
Yeah.
So you need to be realistic about what a young woman faces when she goes off to college or she goes on a date or whatever it might be. You can't be naive. The other thing I think, generally speaking, is more accurate about women than men is that they're more people-pleasing. And so they actually will, in a lot of cases, care more about other people's discomfort than they will their own. They don't want to make it awkward. They don't want to make it uncomfortable. They don't want to make it weird. And so they might be talking with a man who's strange or gives them bad vibes, but because they don't want to make that person feel weird, they put themselves in compromising positions. And so we have to be honest about that. And fathers will do that for their daughters. And then the last component of that is get them in martial arts.
Yeah.
Get them in sports, get them in martial arts, let them have a voice, let them have a way to defend themselves. And look, honestly, the reality is even if a woman on average is in martial arts, she's still probably not going to be able to completely 100% fend off an attacker who's a big male, for example. But there's a level of confidence that comes from it that I think keeps her out of more situations that could otherwise be a risk for her.
Totally. Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if you'd want to. Well, I'm throwing it in there. You know, we're talking about single moms. You know, having some masculinity around the house, right? Trying to put them in sports and get them around other men. But this thought crossed my mind. And that's why we have this conversation for the majority of listeners that are men about being more masculine. Because we could have a home where dads are in home, and guess what? Dad isn't very masculine, and he isn't very manly, and he's not doing the things that we're talking about, right? And so it's one, yes, single moms get some men in their, good men in their lives, and then men that are in the home, be better men, be more manly, and do your job better, right? Which ultimately is at the root of everything that we talk about week in and week out.
And by the way, when you do that, not only are you going to feel better about yourself, everybody around you is going to feel better. Like we have this weird thing generally in society where men are supposed to be more, egalitarian, where everybody's the same, and don't make yourself different than a woman, or don't even acknowledge your differences, and be more passive and timid and be more like a woman. Yeah. And you know who hates that? Women. Like, you think that you're doing it to appease society or appease your wife or appease your kids, and all of them despise you more for it.
Yeah.
You know what women appreciate? You being a man, especially because it's harder and harder to find. So what does that actually mean? It means that you stick to your word. It means that when you say something, you follow through. It means that when there's a challenging issue that arises, you confront it. You don't wait for anybody else to acknowledge it, or you do it. It means that when something needs to be said in a relationship, you're the one who brings it up. Why would you wait for your wife to bring it up? You know it exists. She knows it exists. Be a man. Bring it up.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Deal with it. It means making yourself capable. It means little things, planning activities and dates. It means opening the door or walking on the right side of the street when you're walking your wife down. It means sitting in the correct seat at a restaurant. Like, we think these things are little. They're not little. They're actually really big. And everybody around you is watching you to see how you will behave. And the less manly you are, the less faith they have in you, and the worse society is. Step up, be bold, be courageous, lead, be capable, be assertive, use your voice, use your physicality if you need to, learn how to dominate. And I'm not saying like sexual domination. I'm not saying that. I'm saying learn how to dominate in the workspace. Learn how to be the best at whatever you do, because your job is to put yourself in that position to lead other people into a new place. And people will respect you for it. That's it. Anything else, Kipp?
No, sir. Great way.
All right, guys. Yeah, man, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think the questions are getting better. So I'm not sure what that is a result of. Maybe it's just that we've been doing it long enough and mocked all the bad questions that nobody dares put a bad question in there anymore. But these are really, and there's fewer questions than there has been in the past, but the ones that we get seem to be way more thoughtful and powerful. Do you feel the same way?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, I really appreciate your questions. Hopefully we gave you some things to consider. Some of that got heavy in the middle of our discussion today. And for me, it did. So anyways, I appreciate you guys. A couple of things to check out right now. If you want to go check out our bookshelf, we've got a lot of great books, 25 books that I have personally read. These are not books that I've not read or I'm not familiar with. They're personal recommendations, including 5 that I'm currently reading. Go check that out at orderman.com/bookshelf. And also we've got our event up and running for next year, the Men's Forge, which I believe is the end of April, beginning of May. I can't remember right offhand, but if you go to themensforge.com, you can get enrolled. That's it, guys. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.